Hey, Dr. Nina, host of You, Your Body, and Your Health. I am so glad you're here. Happy Friday. We made it to Friday, and this will be, I guess, the last time I see you before the holiday season. So happy holiday season in advance because we'll have Thanksgiving. Before. So I'm going to jump into a topic that is very, very near and dear to me today, and that is food addiction. Um, I kind of felt bad for bringing this show up prior to Thanksgiving, but you know what? We need to know about this. Food addiction is actually much more common in this day and age than you might think, and we're going to talk about all of the ins and outs of it, and I'm going to answer, of course, any questions you may have as usual. But before I even think about diving into this topic, go ahead and tell me where you're tuning in from. We're coming on a little late, so I'm hoping that some of my regular folks and some new folks got the memo because we are again coming in late. So give me an idea of where you're tuning from, and we'll get into the meat of this topic today. All right, food addiction. Itself is a mental health disorder. A lot of times we think about food addiction in terms of, oh, cravings. Oh, I really like food and therefore, I must be addicted to it. But food addiction is definitely it's a mental health disorder. It's linked to things like cravings and, just loving a certain type of food, but it's much bigger than that. Having personally struggled with food addiction, like I said before, this topic is very, very, very near and dear to me, and it will be the focus of today's show. All right. So, as I always say, this show is focused on improving health span and health span within the lifespan. And this is the number of years, as I always say, that we are apparently or generally healthy within our lifespan. So our goal is to improve that. Now, the thing is, food addiction is usually associated with foods that are rich in fat, sugar, or salt. Right, the stuff that's very good for us, or the stuff that we love, the stuff that we're probably gonna see next week. We're gonna see a whole lot of it next week. It's a complex issue over the lifespan because we have to eat to live. So unlike with drugs, like drugs or alcohol, you can have addictions to alcohol or drugs, but you can go through rehabilitation, you can get over it, and honestly, you never have to see another drink or drug again. Food is different because we actually need it to live. At the same time, it's actually one of the premises behind me starting that salad lady too. I believe that food is meant to be pleasurable and enjoyable as well. So we're not meant to just systematically eat foods, like kind of like animals, just eat these little pebbles of food just to survive. We also want to enjoy the foods we eat. Give me an amen if you think that we're supposed to enjoy the foods we eat, because I personally, want to find joy in the eating experience. So how do we find the balance? How do we strike the right balance between finding pleasure in eating foods and not getting addicted to those foods? And I'm bringing that in as far as the health span goes, is because we have to eat to live. We have to eat to maintain our health span. But eating too much, as in a food addiction, well, that's going to reduce our health span because it can lead to physical problems, emotional problems, and believe it or not, even social problems. And some of the physical problems can include everything we know about digestive disorders, heart disease, diabetes, weight gain. And when it comes to a mental standpoint and social standpoint, even low self esteem, believe it or not, depression and isolation. So I want to emphasize that we really want to think about this food addiction. It's a taboo topic, addiction of any sort, but we want to think about that food addiction in terms of improving or lowering our health span within the lifespan. And so for the successful aging segment, which we have at the end of the show, we're going to talk about some of those detrimental consequences of food addiction, and most important, how you can avoid those in order to age successfully. So I am very excited to see all you folks today, this afternoon now. And let me know, as always, if you have any questions throughout this show. I always come with a little kind of a outline of things that I want to go over, but this is a topic that I definitely don't mind going off the subject on a little bit because I think it's important. Also, be sure to right now, give yourself a second to follow that salad lady on all of the social media channels on Instagram, that .salad.lady, so we can continue the conversation even past today. Now, let's jump into the topic. Thank you so much. I hope to bring good info to you every week. So thank you for that, Tyra. What do you think food addiction is? Go ahead and put it in the comments box. What do you think? What is your perception of a food addiction? Do you think it's something like drugs? Do you think it's something like alcohol? What do you think food addiction is? I'm curious to know because I'll tell you this. Eating behavior itself is determined by more than just how many calories we need or our need for energy. Because again, I said we need a certain amount of food. We need food to live. So but at the same time, it's more about, it's less of, excuse me, it's more than just, the calories we need to eat to live, but it's also the properties of certain foods that really change the way we think of it. Certain foods are palatable, and palatable means really, really good. And then we have some foods that are pleasurable. Usually, these really, really good foods are chocolates or candies or baked goods. These foods, actually, the properties of these foods play a strong role. I'm going to put a figure up here. And yes, you are absolutely right, Sharnay. I would agree that in many cases, a food addiction can be stronger than a drug addiction. Okay, again, it is a mental health disorder. Stay with me, you all, because this is going to look really scientific. So stay with me on this figure. We're going to walk through starting with the young lady eating the hamburger here. Now, I know, we like our burgers, I'm sure. We're going to, don't be offended as we go through this. Some of this may hit home. So when you eat a food, right? When you eat a food that's palatable, pleasurable, like our burgers, like our chocolate, it stimulates the release of metabolic, stress, and appetite hormones. So a whole lot of hormones, all of which drive food cravings. So food cravings are driven by hormones. I need you to know that. And hormonal imbalances obviously are going to cause problems. Now, we talked about stress hormone in earlier shows. That's hormones like cortisol. Raise your hand if you remember cortisol. We talked about that one. That's a hormone that is triggered or increased in response to eating a poor diet. I talked about that before. But here are some other hormones on here that we're going to go through. But first, let me start from the beginning. Look at the arrow right under the lady with the burger. When you eat fast food or when you eat sweets or too much of anything, there are short and long-term changes. At a minimum, you're going to get hormonal changes. That's that cortisol. You're going to also get changes in your insulin and your glucose. And then weight gain over the long term could occur. Now, weight gain may or may not occur in this situation, but you may get weight gain a lot. I'm one of the people, I'm a weight gainer. You may get weight gain as far as eating some of these foods. Some people don't, but know whether you gain weight or not, there are going to be hormonal changes. So let's talk about those. If you look to the left of the screen, right by the logo, you have appetite regulating hormones. Now, these hormones have extremely funny names, but I need to explain to you. Listen real carefully and ask questions if you need it. So you all know about insulin, right? This is the hormone made by the pancreas. It regulates how the body uses glucose or sugar for energy. We know a lot about that with diabetes, November being National Diabetes Month. Insulin itself helps glucose also enter cells in the fat, which we know insulin being linked to weight gain, but also in the muscle and the liver. Now, you got glucose, you got insulin, but here are two, this ghrelin and leptin that you may or may not ever heard of. Ghrelin is a hormone that's produced and released mainly by the stomach. So this is a hormone that basically signals your brain to feel hungry. When ghrelin is released, it basically goes to the brain and says, hey, I'm hungry. I need to eat something. So obviously, we want ghrelin to be under control because it could lead to a certain amount of eating that we may or may not want to do. Are you all with me? Because I want to make sure you're with me as we go through these. Want to make sure you're here. Tell me you're with me. because we got ghrelin. All right. So then you have your leptin. Leptin is a hormone that's actually released by the fat cells in the body. Leptin basically influences the way our body uses calories. So uses calories for energy. So when there's leptin, out, let me first start and say, when you have more fat in your body, you're going to have more leptin because leptin is released from the fat cells. So I want you to get that part first because that's very important to know. And leptin itself, again, is going to influence the amount of calories you eat and burn. Now, let's talk about how it gets with food addiction. I promise you, I'm taking a long time for a reason. When you eat food, any kind of food that's very palatable, your body is going to do two things. One, it's going to go to your reward centers in the brain and say, that food is really, really good. I like the way that feels. I know you felt like that. What do you feel like that? You feel like that when you eat chocolate? You feel like that when you eat cake? Tell me what makes you feel like that. Because you literally will say, I like that. That's what that food is going to do to you. Now, then you go into the hunger and satiety signals, which are controlled by the brain or in the hypothalamus. That part is going to say, eat more because I'm hungry, depending on the hormone, right? So let's take out the left side and look at the middle. You got the reward centers, you got the hunger and satiety signals, and those are basically depending on what the food is, they're going up and down. You get a reward, you get more hungry. Your body likes that, it loves that. So ultimately, take that all away, and the ultimate outcome is if it's satiating, if it's full, if it increases feeling of the fullness, if it rewards you, you're going to eat more. And it's a vicious cycle that just keeps going and going and going. Tell me if you understand that. Let's move on. I hope you get that, because the key takeaway is that food stimulates reward-related brain activities that influence our food choices. So if you're eating a food that tastes good and your body likes it, you're going to eat more and more of it, period. Now, I want to say this because when you're in a situation, and I get this a lot, when people are criticizing people for eating too much and that sort of thing, oftentimes we just say, oh, it's because that person doesn't have any willpower. Oh, that person doesn't know how to control their weight, right? But there's a lot going on in our bodies that unfortunately we can't control. I'm going to give you an example. With people who are overweight and obese, a lot of times they get the bad end of the stick. And why do I say this? Because I talked about leptin. If I tell you that the more adipose tissue you have, the more leptin your body has, well, you got your body fighting against you. This is why some physicians recommend undergoing bariatric surgery, because it's not just about a lack of willpower and that you just don't have any self-control. Many times for many people, it ain't that easy. It just ain't that easy. And so I want you to understand that I'm not giving people a pass, but I want you to understand the almost disease-like manifestation that can occur in something like food addiction as a result of everything that goes on in the body. And I want to talk about now a craving versus an addiction, because people get these two mixed up a lot. A food craving is an intense and persistent desire for food. And this could be linked to anything. This could be linked to deficiency, a deficiency meaning your body needs something that it doesn't have. It may be a vitamin, it may be a mineral that drives you to eat certain foods because your body needs it. It could be boredom, right? This is emotional eating. It could even be excitement. It can be boredom or excitement. In either case, your body will eat, you'll crave food. We're going to talk about another one that's really interesting in a bit, and that's habitual. Then we have restrictions, and these are especially self-imposed restrictions. Now, this is what happens a lot, unfortunately, folks, and people who get on these extreme diets. You get on these extreme diets, you're not eating foods because you're not eating the foods, not because, you don't want to eat them. You're eating them because you have some lofty goal that's causing you to restrict. This is a sure recipe here for cravings, intense cravings. The more you tell your body no, especially if it's a nutritious food. The more you tell your body no, the more it's going to call for you. And then you have the food addiction component of it. So cravings, again, these things are kind of short term. Tell me if you're with me. Can I get an amen if you're with me? Now, food addiction is more complex because it's like cravings plus utter loss of control of your eating behaviors. And again, this is not because you're just greedy or you just want to eat just because. A lot of times, remember those hormones. You've taken your hormonal system, it's imbalanced. Everything is imbalanced. You gain weight, everything is just wrong and imbalanced. Plus cravings, right? Imagine that. And then you have repeated bouts of overeating, plus dopamine release, which I didn't even talk about in the other slide. Dopamine is that feel good hormone that your brain has. And that's the connection between food addiction and drug addiction and alcohol. That's the connection, dopamine. And this initiates a vicious cycle where the brain continues to seek out a pleasurable response, just like it does with drug use. So how do we avoid? Anybody got a solution for it? Let me take to you all. Eve, I like your input here. Food addiction is mental cravings and conditioning. We're all addicted. Yeah, to a certain extent, I'll agree with that. Just too lazy to change. I will not agree with that. It's not always a too lazy to change situation. Sometimes it's deeper than that. Having personally struggled with food addiction, this is where my story comes in. I struggled with food addiction when I was 12 years old, and it was a mental health disorder. It wasn't greed. I was depressed. I was actually bullied very bad in school. I was depressed. And I turned to food because it was the one thing that I could actually control. That was my personal situation. I ultimately gained 65 pounds. Why? Because the fatty foods I was eating, I wasn't a sugar kid, I was a salty kid. French fries, burgers, hot dogs, rib tips. I ate like uncontrollably. And I didn't eat because I was a greedy little girl. My mom cooked every night. I ate for comfort. I was 12 years old and I didn't know how to handle it. That was not an idea of a matter of being intellectually lazy. At the time, I lived in a food desert, but I won't even blame it on that, again, because my mother cooked. It was an idea of turning to food for my own mental health reasons. And this happens with a lot of people. Remember, we don't give our brains credit enough for how powerful it is. That little pea-sized hypothalamus in the brain has a whole lot of power with your behaviors. Can you get over it? Yeah. But is it a matter of just no willpower or being lazy or just being a fat person? Absolutely not. And I've worked with enough people as a health coach to know that. So I want you to understand that it's more complex than that. And sometimes we need extra support in other areas. I hope you get what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Because some of you may be struggling with this now. Now, I want to give you a key takeaway. It's one of the ways I got over my food addiction personally, and I still, struggle with emotional eating sometimes today. Practicing mindfulness. That's the key takeaway. I gave you this big old problem, right? It's a big problem. Practicing mindfulness is a big one. And when I say mindfulness, appreciating the food for what it is, how it can nourish your body, right? How it can nourish your body. You know what I do personally? I embrace the pleasure of the eating experience. And I do away with dietary restrictions. I don't say that I don't eat anything. I have a very all-inclusive diet. I don't say I don't eat anything, but I eat when I feel like it. I follow an intermittent fasting regimen, which has personally been very good for me because what it does is take away that need. Because I have a finite window in which I personally eat. It takes away that need, that feeling of feeling like I always have to eat something. So intermittent fasting, which I've been doing for over 10 years, even before it was popular, it's been very good to me personally when it comes to controlling, again, something that I still struggle with to this day. Emotional eating, not food addiction so much, but that emotional eating. So I hope you get something from that. I'm going to close. I want to bring up one more topic. And I appreciate you all listening. I sometimes tear up when I talk about this concept. I'm very sensitive to it. And I've dealt with a lot of clients oh my gosh, when it clicks for them and they get it, then we can work on that change. I want to talk about the role of habits. And this is how I'm going to this will be my last topic. I'm going to put up another visual and I'm going to explain habits to you. It turns out that many of the simple indulgences that we have are a function of habits. Now, this is where a lot of people get food addiction, cravings, and everything mixed up. We have habits. Now, habits complicate the situation. I'll give you an example. One of the issues with tobacco use, and one of the reasons it's so difficult to quit, is because people have connected an addiction and a habit. The addiction is the chemicals in the cigarettes, right? The habit is the smoking of the cigarette. So you got the nicotine and you got the habit of just smoking a cigarette at certain times a day. Well, eating is no different. Habits emerge through associative learning. The body is very intellectually lazy. The brain is very lazy. The brain wants things to be easy. So what we do is we find behavioral patterns that work and that allow us to reach our goals by forming what are called associations between cues and routines that work. Here's an example. These are called habit loops. So the cue is to tell your brain to go into an automatic mode when and which habit to use. And the routine, which can be physical, mental, or emotional, is that. And then you have your reward. That follows it. Reward is very important. We just talked about this. It's the reward that follows helps your brain decide if this actual habit loop is worth remembering for the future. And controlling food cravings could be as simple as breaking the loop. I'll give you an example. I am going to tell on my husband because he has an attraction to Mrs. Fields cookies at the mall. And I kid you not, when we pass a mall, his mouth waters for Mrs. Fields cookies. Not because he wants cookies, but his brain has said mall equals cookies. Tell me if that makes sense to you. So he doesn't even want the cookies, right? Mall equals cookies. So you got to break that loop. Here's another one. I'll tell you my personal one. I'll tell her myself. Popcorn, movie theater popcorn. I don't even like that popcorn. But ever since I was a child, there's been a positive association with going to the movies and getting a bucket of popcorn. Once again, that popcorn is not the best popcorn I've ever had. I know you can agree with that. And this has actually been studied that they, in a research study, a very cool research study, they gave individuals stale popcorn and took them to the movies and they still ate the stale popcorn because the cue to tell your brain that you want popcorn is the movies. And then the routine, I always eat popcorn at the movies. I always eat cookies at the mall. And the reward is saying, those cookies were sweet. That popcorn was pleasant. I think I'll keep that. Now look at me and tell me if you get it. You get that? I see Amber gets it. Tell me if you get it. So how do we get over that? The key takeaway here in many cases is to change habits, right? And this is a gradual process that involves slow, steady changes that are easy to maintain. But here's the deal. In order for it to become a successful habit, I want you to look at me when I say this. Hold on. I want you to focus on progress, not perfection. We are not perfect. We are not perfect. We are going to want cookies at the mall sometimes, cake at the Thanksgiving feast, yams, whatever else that causes these food cravings and addictions. We're going to want that stuff. Focus on progress and not perfection. Small changes that you can actually do. And if you say, and stop saying, I can't eat this. Oh no, I'm gonna stop this in the new year. Oh no, I'm never gonna eat cake anymore, just on Thanksgiving. No more chitlins. I just do it one time a year. I'm never gonna do it again. I don't like the way I feel. If you continue to do that, you're gonna just continue to want it. So stop saying what you can't have or what you won't have. Want is a bad one. Never say no. Never say never. Just focus on what you can have. That makes sense. Focus on what you can have. You can have a small piece of cake. You can have a piece of pie. You can have a burger. Just don't make it a habit. Break the loop. I broke that popcorn loop. It was, you know how I had to do it? I quit going to the movies. COVID helped. COVID actually helped me break that popcorn habit I had. Think about that as we move into the successful aging segment, because I got some more advice for you. I hope that helped. Give me a fist bump if you got what I'm saying and if you feel empowered, because this was not meant to be a negative talk. This was meant to be a positive talk. The more you know, the better you'll become. So, how do you improve your habits? I read this really good book by Charles Duhigg, and it was called, what was the name of the book? Well, it's about habits. I'll put the title in there when I get the title again. But it's a book really about habit forming behaviors, right? And one of the things he talked about in the book was something called Keystone Habits. And the Keystone Habits was something that you can focus on, something small, to avoid the risk and detrimental consequences of food addiction. I think it was called The Power of Habit. The book was called The Power of Habit. Very good book. I recommend it. And basically, these keystone habits, like I said before, are simple, very doable habits that instinctively lead to better things and better choices, just really small habits. And I say that because I talked about this a little bit last week. Last week we talked about how hard it is to change, as you age. These habit loops, oh, they get hard. Give me a wave if you know what I mean. I'm over 40. Habit loops are definitely they formed and they get difficult. I got a habit loop with wine in them at night and coffee in the morning. But you know what? I like I think it's fine. I have a little, and that's good, but it's a habit. I will say it's a habit. So what I do is I adopt these keystone habits. I drink about 16 ounces of water a day. Right? I eat about 6 to 8 servings of veggies. I eat a lot of veggies. You don't have to do this. You can eat maybe three small servings of veggies every day. Take a walk after work. That's doable. Is that doable? Take 60 seconds to breathe. Is that doable? Is that small and doable? Go to bed at 9. What you say? What you say to going to bed at 9? Yeah, probably ain't doable, Nina. I don't know about that. But these are small behaviors that instinctively lead to bigger, better choices. One of the issues with us, especially as we get into the new year, is that we tend to have these lofty, lofty goals, and we can't achieve them. But these keystone habits start with very simple changes that we can achieve. Again, remember, focus on what you can have, not what you can't have. And these very small changes lead to big gains. Small changes can lead to big gains. Remember that. So that book was called The Power of Habit, Tanisha. And yes, that, in case you're interested, it's a very good book. And I didn't receive, I'm not receiving any kickbacks for saying that, but it's a good book. So that is all I have for you today. I want you to take what I just said today. Again, take that information, use it today. These small changes. And be sure, as always, to follow me once again on all my social media channels. And let's finish the conversation if you'd like. And I also recommend going to my Facebook page, that's Salad Lady. And at the top of my page, I actually have a link where you can download my free healthy living guide. It's totally free. You can basically sign up to download my free healthy living guide, and it offers very simple, doable tips to make it easier to eat healthy. So I hope you consider going ahead and downloading that. Once again, it's totally free. And as always, be sure to tune in every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually at Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for tuning in this special time today. I hope you got what you need, and I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your small changes that will lead to your big gains but also having pleasure in the eating experience and pleasure in the food experience and being mindful as you enjoy every single bite of your favorite foods, but also knowing the importance of moving. Because remember what I said in the episode when we talked about physical activity and diabetes, if you're moving, so is the glucose. So I will see you next time where our live episode will be more about habits. So we're going to talk more about that habit loop and habit formings and behaviors for changing your habits. So again, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm looking at your comments. Hey, I thank you for saying I'm awesome. You're awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see you next time. Take care.